designing the next chapter for you, whether that's in your career or your life, again, takes time. There can be breathing room here. You do not need to rush to a solution or to an endpoint. In fact, I would really encourage you not to do that, right? Just like you were saying, to actually try some things and see what works to inform your learning.
There are opportunities for our work and careers everywhere, if you know where to look. That's easier said than done, especially in our fast-paced and constantly changing world. Marianne Fairmouth is talking to experts, employers, and job seekers to bring you insight and understanding about what's possible. This is Career Can Do, where we're navigating the new work world.
Welcome to the Career Can Do podcast, a top global podcast dedicated to helping you navigate the new work world. My name is Chris Sandland, and I'll be your host for this episode. Today, I have the pleasure of sitting down with Ashley Jablow, who is the founder of Wayfinders Collective, a life design studio helping individuals and organizations create careers and lives they truly love. With a background in innovation and human-centered design, spanning roles at IDEO, the White House, and Luma Institute, Ashley brings a rare blend of creativity, clarity, and compassion to her work as a coach, facilitator, and speaker. After a sudden layoff in 2017, Ashley didn't just redesign her career, she reimagined her life. Now, through guided journals, workshops, and speaking engagements, she empowers others to reconnect with purpose. Whether you're feeling stuck, burnt out, or simply ready for something more, Ashley's story and insights will spark something in you. Ashley, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Chris. I'm so happy to be here.
You're the founder of Wayfinders Collective. What's inspired you to create it, and what does wayfinding mean to you in the context of career and life design?
So, wayfinding is a word that I didn't necessarily know or even associate with until actually I was on a red-eye flight in 2017, the summer I got laid off. So, if I kind of wind back a little bit, I have been a very ambitious, high achieving professional for all of my career, really. That's just kind of part of my DNA. I've worked in some incredible places and had the opportunity to do really meaningful work. And also, at many steps along the way, I felt really misaligned and kind of not integrated. Like my work self and my real self weren't one and the same in many instances. And in 2017, I found myself unexpectedly laid off from what I thought was not just my dream job, but in many ways the pinnacle of my career. And I spent a summer essentially doing a career redesign sprint. I'd been working in design and innovation for many years, and I wondered what would it look like if I took the tools of my trade, so to speak, and turned them on myself to reimagine my career. Now, as I love to think about, we make plans and the universe laughs. So, of course, I set a 60-day timeline to redesign my entire career. And fast forward to that moment when I was on this airplane, this red-eye flight back from Portland, Oregon, visiting family, going back to Washington, D.C., where I lived. And I was at the end of my 60 days, Chris, and I was no closer to figuring out what I was going to do with the next phase of my career. And as I sat in the dark, really kind of angry, both because I wasn't sleeping on the red eye flight, and also because I just felt no closer to answering that question of what's next, out of nowhere, the phrase creative wayfinding popped into my head. And I truly, like I said, I'd never thought of that word. I'd never even put creative and wayfinding together in a sentence. And yet, it was sort of a divine download, if you will. And as I considered what that meant to me, I started really thinking about the process of wayfinding in, for example, a nautical context. If you're navigating the open ocean, you have to use the tools available to you, the stars, the moon, the currents, the wind speed, even your intuition. And As I thought about what wayfinding looks like in life and in our work, it's actually one of the most universal human experiences that we are navigating our way through work and life. And we're using the tools that we have available to us, as well as our own intuition, to find our way essentially across that open ocean. So, although I didn't sleep a wink on that airplane, I walked off a number of hours later, super energized and totally focused because my business, Wayfinders Collective, had essentially been born.
Ashley, did you find that the reason those 60 days came and went and you felt no closer to your objective is because you had an overwhelming amount of ideas and you just didn't know where to start? Like you said, I could do this, I could do this, I could do that. And the thought of picking just one of those things amongst a sea of a lot of choices was very daunting and intimidating. Or was it the opposite? Did you get to the end of those 60 days and thought, you know what, I have zero ideas because I cannot think of where I would want to go. I just don't have any ideas. Like, which dynamic was it for you?
I want to say it was both of those and also not at all. I mean, I think what I consider, like, as I reflect back on that experience, I think one of the mistakes that we often make as career changers or pivoters is that we assume that the time it's going to take to quote unquote figure this out is always shorter than it really is, than it really takes. I know that I made progress in those 60 days, but I think my expectation was that I would solve it. And I hadn't solved it. I had made meaningful progress, even though they were baby steps. I can look back and say, I did move myself forward, but I think I had an expectation that a summer was enough time and that I would essentially reemerge after Labor Day and say, hey, everybody, I'm back. And I wasn't able to do that. And I've since learned it takes a while, maybe even a lifetime, to design your career and your life with intention, with curiosity, with creativity, to really get to a place that's authentic to you.
You make a great point. So, what does it mean to design your life, and how does that process differ from just planning or setting goals?
I do think that orienting yourself towards designing a life that you love, or life design as I call it, really is an intentional process. It's a creative one, it's a very curious one. It's one that asks you to really stay tethered to four kind of key steps or even behaviors that I would really encourage people to practice. So, the first is discovering who you are today. So often, especially for people in mid career, senior career, but even for those of us starting out, a few years after college, we tend to develop a story about who we are. And I think life design really starts with being able to pause and say, who am I right now, as opposed to the person who chose a major 10 years ago, for example. So, life design really asks you to start with self discovery, as well as discovery, meaning looking out into the world and getting a sense of what's going on, what's current, what do I want to learn more about, whether it's in my field, in the job market, in the world at large. The second thing that life design really asks us to do is to define our values, our priorities, our criteria for what good looks like. When you are just out of college, for example, your criteria for your next career chapter is likely very different than if you're in your 40s or 50s and you've built an entire life around yourself. So, really pausing to define and name, even narrow in on what does success mean to me at this point in my life and my career. The third thing life design asks us to do is to imagine. Now, using our imagination and being creative in that way is something that as adults, we're kind of squeamish about. We don't love whether it's brainstorming or visioning or even just playing, doing things with our hands, living in color, so to speak. But really, life design asks us to imagine our most resonant or authentic future, the opportunities, the wishes, the dreams that we're really hoping for. And then finally, life design is all about iteration. And when I say that, what I mean is rather than ripping off the band-aid and like quitting your job cold turkey on a Tuesday afternoon, it asks you instead to take that big goal or that change you're working towards and to break it down into really small, consistent, maybe even daily action that you can take that helps you de-risk the big vision and dream that you are aiming towards and also build confidence as you go because you're learning essentially through action. So that's really, I think, the difference between planning or even coming up with a roadmap. Life design certainly includes that goal setting and a sense of direction, but I really think it's so much more as well.
That's a great point. I will tell you, I've seen a lot of folks in our line of work who kind of rip the band-aid off. And while in some instances I can understand, like, you know what, this is a completely new way of thinking. I need to sort of re-innovate and re-engineer what I'm doing. And so they just want to go all in. A lot of times what I will coach different candidates on is, hey, there's a path, there's a plan. We don't need to do that. If I mean, maybe there's certain situations that does call for that. But honestly, how do we take baby steps towards that monster goal because we don't know what's going to happen at the end of that. And maybe sort of as your point, like it's all iterations. So maybe we start going down a path and we learn something about ourselves along the way that had we not taken some of those smaller steps, we would have been surprised to learn down the road. And so some of that allows us to, manage the risk associated with change in our life. So I love that. For those who are feeling stuck or disconnected, to tell somebody to redesign their life, throw everything away, start from a brand new slate is daunting. It can be very discouraging. So, what's a small step that you recommend someone to do to start moving towards alignment again?
Such a thoughtful question. And you're right. I mean, I have to name even over here, Chris, I'm feeling like a little squeamish when you say, like, we just got to go for it, right? Because even I'm someone who practices this all the time, and that doesn't mean it's comfortable. So I just want to acknowledge that designing the next chapter for you, whether that's in your career or your life, again, takes time. There can be breathing room here. You do not need to rush to a solution or to an endpoint. In fact, I would really encourage you not to do that, right? Just like you were saying, to actually try some things and see what works to inform your learning. So I would say if you're feeling stuck, if you're really not sure how to get started, there are a couple things that come to mind. The first one is one of the reasons why people get stuck is because they assume that their career change or whatever they're designing next in their lives is only a thinking problem. We're so good at just staying in the like kind of brain space, and we disconnect from the rest of our lived experience, the rest of our body. So if you're feeling stuck, one of the things I would really encourage you is to get out of your head and actually do something. Maybe that means instead of staring at your computer, if you're feeling overwhelmed by a lot of thoughts, grab a pen and paper and actually write it because that physical experience is going to unlock new kind of thinking and momentum, even. That might look like, I don't know, if you are inspired by art, maybe go to your local art museum or even just go sit in a different coffee shop that you've never been to. Sign up for an art class or a book club. It's funny because even if it has nothing to do with the change that you are aiming to make, right? You might be looking for a new job, but you decide to sign up for a cooking class. It's going to energize you because it's a full body creative experience. And I can guarantee that by the time you go back to your desk, you're starting to work on your resume or you're preparing for an interview, you will have a different perspective because you've gotten yourself moving. So that's for sure one thing I would recommend.
I have a quite funny story. I'm 100% resonate with this because my thing when I'm getting in a stressful situation or there's a lot going on, what really helps me to sort of take a step back and decompress is to clean. I really enjoy cleaning. And so your point about doing something completely random, completely different, but it's active and you're moving and you're using a different part of your brain and something that's therapeutic to you. Hopefully my wife doesn't hear this because I don't want her to know that cleaning is therapeutic to me, but that is totally true for me because I can go do that thing, whether it's clean the bathroom or go in the kitchen, do some dishes. 10 or 15 minutes is all I need. And then I can go back and sit at my chair. And for some reason, I'm more inspired or all my mental blockages start to disappear and I can be more productive. So I try to break up some of my day if I have the opportunity, if I'm working from home, to do things like that that are completely random. And it's really strange how that sort of helps to loosen the things up, to grease those gears, to get the wheels of thinking turning. So anyway, that was
Yeah.
when
Oh,
you were
I
saying
love
that. I'm like,
that.
man, she's like got this great, super inspiring thing, and I'm like, I'm gonna ruin it by saying, Ashley, I love Jelly.
No, it's so good, Chris. And okay, so first of all, I would say your secret's safe with me, but I think it's on the podcast now, so maybe not. But you know what you make me think of, if I can just tell a brief story. So before I started my business, again, working in some really incredible places, I was actually at this point in my life, I was working at the White House doing really just impactful work that also, if I'm honest, I felt very disconnected from because, again, I knew it was important, but it didn't feel like my purpose. And I remember at the time starting to look for a coach. And I interviewed a whole bunch of different coaches trying to find the right fit, which is very important. And I remember meeting this one coach and saying to her, I've been applying for jobs. I'm just so exhausted. I'm so uninspired. I feel so stuck around what I'm supposed to do next. Even that language, like, what am I supposed to do next? If you ever find yourself asking that question, know that that's time for a pause. And I remember this one coach said to me, Ashley, you cannot solve this problem creatively or differently when your creative well has run dry. You are not going to get to a different solution. So she said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to imagine you have the problem you're trying to solve. In my case, it was, what is the job going to be? And she said, I want you to imagine you could hold that in your hands, and I want you to pick it up and put it down. Think about where you want to put it. Do you bury it? Do you put it on a side table? Do you put it in the hall closet? Whatever it is, I want you to put it down. And for 4 weeks, I want you to only focus on things that bring you joy. And of course, at that point, I'm like, oh, that sounds awful. Like, what are you talking about? And she said, and here's how to go about doing it. I want you to make a list of 20 things that bring you joy. And then I want you to commit to doing 1 to 2 of them every week for the next 4 weeks. And then in 4 weeks, I want you to send me an email and let me know what has changed for you. Now, I love a good homework assignment. So there was no way, like, recovering straight A student here, there was no way I was not going to do this homework assignment. And I remember feeling like such a failure right out of the gate because I couldn't come up with 20 things. I think I came up with maybe 11 and then was just, again, stuck. So I tried not to let that stop me. I made a list of big things like, in my case, playing hooky and going to the museum. That's something that definitely brings me joy. But also like a 5 minute cup of tea and a book, or a call with a friend, or some fresh air, right? It could be of all different sizes. And I went ahead and I practiced 1 to 2 of those things every week for the next 4 weeks. And I can tell you, Chris, first of all, she was absolutely right. My job problem didn't go anywhere. I put it in the closet and I knew it was there. But when I came back to it 4 weeks later, I was a different person. My perspective had shifted. I was able to start looking at that problem differently. So, again, it's kind of counterintuitive, but if you're feeling stuck, whether it's cleaning or it's a cup of tea on your back porch, whatever it might be, take some time out regularly to refill your own tank, to recharge your batteries. And I promise that will support you getting unstuck in the long run.
And I think it's critical that your coach told you to put that work thing away because I think a lot of people try to do both. They like thinking, oh, I know this isn't working for me professionally. Let me go try to reimagine, but they can't turn off the work thing or they can't turn off the problem in their head. And so, how are you really able to do the self evaluation, give yourself the time, the grace, the ability to fail as you're sort of reimagining yourself while you've got all of this in your mind? And perhaps that's influencing some of your decision making, right? Because you're thinking, well, if I go do that crazy thing, well, that's totally not in alignment with my work thing. So, like, that sounds dumb in the moment. I'm never going to do that. But if you give yourself the grace of, I'm just going to take that stress and just, it's going to be away for a while. It should not influence what I'm doing. I'm going to think with a clear mind and just give myself the opportunity to be unimpaired, unencumbered. What that does is pretty remarkable, I could imagine. So you've worked with everyone from government leaders in the White House to awesome, fun, cool art people and creatives. I can imagine there's lots of differences between those groups of people and all along that spectrum. But I wonder if there's any similarities. Do you see anything similar amongst all of your different clients, regardless of what domain and what industry, what professional career they pursue?
I mean, at our core, we're all human. So we all are, of course, driven to belong, to feel connected, to feel purposeful in the work we're doing or the way we're living. I think what comes up actually is also as humans what we resist. I think about, especially when I've worked in the world of innovation, innovation with a capital I, whether I was with, federal government agencies or working with creatives, talking about how do we innovate and what are the methods and the mindsets of innovation. One of the things that I think is so fascinating about us humans is that we can say we want something, we desire something, and also we can really resist actually implementing that. So, when we talk about innovation, what we're really talking about is change, change of all kinds. And change is actually kind of a four-letter word. In most corporate settings, in government, in creative work, change as human beings is something that's really deeply uncomfortable for us. How that shows up in different contexts, that could look like, well, this is how we've always done it. We might say, oh, well, we want to innovate, we want to improve, we want, even as individuals, we want to grow and evolve and be ambitious and reach new heights. But wait a minute, I always do it this way. We always work this way. This is how we always make decisions. And so change is very complex because it requires us to do different things. And what I've learned as I've come to embrace change myself is that actually we find examples of change everywhere, whether it's the seasons or it's a newborn baby. We are always changing and growing, and things are actually never the same. So I think at the core, whether you're designing your career or you are creating a new program or service for your citizens, for your customers, whoever it might be, at the end of the day, we have to grapple with our relationship to the concept of change and how we show up in moments of change.
I think change is really difficult because it introduces a variable that we can't control. Today, we know exactly what we're going through. We understand the complex situation, the institution that we are in. Granted, it may not be fun, it may not be awesome, but at least we understand it. It's something we can relatively predict with some level of certainty. But if you're not happy, that's not a formula for success. So the next thing is, well, we have to change that. Well, oh my gosh, hold on. What if I fail? What if I make this crazy leap or I make this jump and it isn't? I don't want to do that either. And so then I've left this great thing that, whatever, it pays my bills, it keeps a roof over my head, feeds my family, but I don't love it. But at least I'm taking care of some of those necessities. But if I go and change it and that doesn't work, then there's embarrassment, there's failure, there's, oh my goodness. And so you're absolutely right. Change is 1000% uncomfortable. But what I will tell you is change, I don't know who says this, but change is the only constant in this universe.
Absolutely.
So what I think people need to embrace is change may result in success, it may result in failure, but what it will do is it will push you forward. And moving forward provides you clarity, provides you insight, and gives you more direction, gives you more information than you had before you made the change. And that's very powerful. Information is very powerful. And so people should try to set aside those preconceived notions that, wow, change is hard. And the fear of the unknown is uncomfortable. Instead, say, hey, you know what? Fear is good. Let's do this. I embrace it and bring it on. Let's go.
Yeah, it's so true. And, I mean, let's name it. The other four-letter word that really is a four-letter word in all of this is risk with a capital R. And learning how to find some measure of stability in risk is really difficult. And also, there's a quote that I love. I think it's from former US General Eric Shinseki, who said, if you dislike change, you're going to like irrelevance even less.
Wow, that's really cool, really powerful. What's one myth about career change that you wish more people would just let go of?
I actually think this connects very nicely to the conversation about change and risk. I think a lot of times, because as a coach, I hear from people who come to me and say, I just want clarity. I just want to know, where am I going? What am I doing? What's the plan? And I think something sneaky that sometimes happens for folks is that we may use the word clarity, but what we're actually hoping for is certainty. And unfortunately, certainty is elusive. So I think that's one thing I would encourage people to just check in with. Clarity can come through lots of different pathways. Clarity can come through learning and action and reflection and creativity. Certainty is sort of a slippery fish because we know everything is always changing. So that's one thing I would encourage people to just consider. When I say clarity, is what I'm really hoping for deep down certainty, because I'm not sure that that's our goal.
We talked a little bit offline about some of your work, and one of the things that really was resonated with me is your 100 days of designing my life journal. So what inspired that, and what have you learned from people who are using it?
I love sharing the journals with folks because I think they're a really easy entry point to the world of life design and reflection. So, long story short, in 2020, I started an art project called 100 Days of Designing My Life. We were all in the pandemic, the whole world was turned upside down. And for whatever reason, I decided to pick up my watercolor paintbrushes. And over the course of 2 years, I created 100 watercolor postcards, about 3 by 5, that depict different innovation frameworks, coaching methods, and even visuals and metaphors that I had been kind of kicking around in my own head for a while. Fast forward to 2024, I'd had these watercolors for a number of years, but didn't really know what to do with them. So, over a number of years, kind of slowly figured it out. And in March of 2024, I decided to self publish 4 guided reflection journals based on these watercolors, each one focusing on the 4 steps of life design. And I let people know I was going to make them before I'd even written a single word. I incredibly felt so supported. My community pre ordered a whole bunch of copies, which really made me commit to doing this. And over the course of 7 months, I self published all 4 of these journals. So by October of 2024, I was holding all 4 of them in my hands.
1 year ago, basically today or now.
Yes, yes. We just had a birthday party, actually. It was so much fun. And it's been the most incredible thing to share these journals with people and hear how they are supporting folks to really, again, deepen their learning about themselves and then take action to move themselves forward. So gratifying.
Well, Ashley, I hate to do this, but we have reached the end of our time here, and I feel like we could go on for hours and hours. But thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing your knowledge and your wisdom. But let our audience know, how can they find you?
Oh, it's such a joy, Chris. And I agree, we could keep chatting. And I would love to connect with folks. So you can learn more about my work at lifedesignschool.co. At that link, you'll learn more about me, about my coaching practice, and about some free resources, as well as the journal. So it's all right there. I'm also really active on LinkedIn and Instagram at Ashley Jablow. So you're welcome to connect with me there.
Fantastic. Well, that wraps up another great episode of the Career Can Do podcast. See you on the next one.
We thank you for tuning in to our Career Can Do podcast. We make no guarantees on results for your particular quest, but we hope you enjoy the information presented. The views and opinions expressed in this program are solely that of the guest or speaker and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of Marianne Fairmouth and Fairmouth and Company. Thank you.